And there's a couple different things we can talk about, Jordan, but I'll start with the elephant in the room, which is the goal to go series. And I think it all comes down to, I'll address it because I see Daryl G and a couple other people bring it up. I don't think Sark needs to hire an offensive coordinator. I don't think he needs to hire a play caller. Here's why I say that. Unless he's 100% content and ready to give that up, don't do it. And people are going to use the Ryan Day example, right? You look at Ryan Day giving up play calling. First off, he's if you think Ryan Day is still not very much involved in that Ohio State offense, you're fooling yourself. Second off, it just so happens that Ryan Day's mentor is Chip Kelly, who was looking to get out of UCLA, just needed to get out of jail free card, and Ryan Day offered him the golden parachute to come call plays at Ohio State. Sark doesn't have any kind of mentors like that.
He's going to go call Pete Carroll to call plays for him? No.
Norv Turner's not coming to call plays at Texas. Norm Chow's not coming to call plays at Texas, right? So that's just not going to happen. Sark doesn't have that kind of mentor, one. Two, the Texas offense, it's not like we're talking about Jimbo Fisher's A&M offense, right? Like, you're not that bad of a shape where he's got to give up the call sheet on game day. It's causing it's a detriment to your program now. It's causing negative effects for your program. What I do think, though, is Sark needs to find an identity in the red zone. They've got to find their red zone identity, Jordan, because I wrote about that for our roundtable that came out last night. Like, hey, the topic was what needs to happen for Texas to get over the hump in 2025. And I look at Sark, and, you can look at all kinds of numbers. You can look at trends. The numbers and the trends I looked at, red zone offense has gotten worse every year he's been there. If you just look at red zone conversion rate, it's got, now touchdown rate is a different thing, and I'll get into that. But you look at that red zone scoring rate. If I can pull it up real quick, just give me a sec. I was not prepared for this. All right. So red zone scoring rate under Sark. Go back to year one, that 5-7 team. They were fourth in the country in red zone offense. Scoring rate was 93.6%. And in touchdown rate, they were top 5 in the country in touchdown rate in the red zone.
Yeah, and the O-line was respectfully dog shit, but they had a Bijan Robinson and a Roschon Johnson.
I'm glad you brought that up. Go to the following season. Texas was 19th in the country in red zone scoring rate. Now, touchdown rate dropped to the point where you were 65th in the country in touchdown rate. Here's the difference, though. Bijan and Roschon, those two combined for 15 of the offense's 35 red zone touchdowns in 2021. They combined for 19 of the offense's 36 touchdowns in 2022. So 53% of the red zone touchdowns in 2022, even though your touchdown rate dropped, you still had Bijan and Roschon accounting for well over 50% of your touchdowns. You had an identity in the red zone. It was your two NFL running backs, and that should be your identity. Let's go to 2023. In 2023, you go from 19th, and you go from a top 20 red zone offense to 90th in the country in red zone scoring rate. You went from, what was your scoring rate? In 2022, your scoring rate was 89.7%. You're down to just above 80% in 2023 with a 50% touchdown rate. You were 120th in the country last year in red zone touchdown rate. And this year, the touchdown rate was up. You went from 50.8% to 63.8%. So you're just outside the top 50 nationally in touchdown rate. But your red zone scoring rate, you're under 80% for the year, 79.7, 101st in the country. It's the worst red zone scoring rate under Sark. So red zone scoring, you've gotten worse every year. Yep. You lost Roschon and Bijan, but it's not like you're hurting for weapons. Like you've still got weapons, but you've gotten progressively worse in the red zone every year.
Yeah, and I don't know what the number is now, but I'm pretty sure heading into the Ohio State game, Texas averaged like 3.15 points per red zone trip and was like bottom 10 in the country. Do you know how ass that is?
Terrible. It's awful. And
hey guys, Texas, one of the worst teams in red zone offensively. You know who is second best in the country red zone defensively? The Buckeyes. Yeah. And they have a Caleb Downs who, everyone's talking about him making that play. Yes, Trey Wisner stiff-armed him into the turf, but if that doesn't happen, he might be able to get the edge. I personally think Lathan Ransom is going to make the tackle no matter what, with or without Caleb Downs shooting the gap on that play. But, it was a horrible red zone possession. And,
I can't think of another one, Jordan. Like maybe
it reminded me of the Texas OU game
in
2023.
This was worse though, not just because of the stakes of the game, like the calls actually you couldn't.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong. The goal to go series against OU, Sark ran a toss during that series too, didn't they?
I think so, but it didn't lose as much yardage, and they tried going up the middle several times, if I remember correctly.
And then they ran the screen to Xavier Worthy on the tunnel screen to Worthy on fourth down and couldn't get it.
Kind of want to go back to what you were saying about Jack Sawyer's play at the end. Like, never in my life have I had a big a moment as like that where it's like, did that just happen?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what it felt like. And because it felt like that, I'm like looking around like, holy shit, this is real. There's no flags.
Yeah.
Holy shit. And like, I'm at the back of the end zone they were trying to score into right there, seeing the whole thing. And it was just, holy shit, this is real. And, with people are talking about Quinn Ewers, people are talking about the play calling. Very few people are bringing up how Cam Williams had his ass beat all night by Jack Sawyer. And I do not think Cam Williams is 100% by any means. There are multiple plays when they're in pass pro, and he's just not getting vertical up the field, and he's not even getting horizontal. He's coming out of his stance and is moving his feet, but he's not moving anywhere. And Jack Sawyer's running around him, running through him, and, he dominated him. Mm-hmm. That last play was, a great reflection of what Jack Sawyer did to Cam Williams all night.
Yeah.
And – even Kelvin Banks, he graded out pretty well, I think, PFF-wise. Early on, I think JTT was giving Kelvin Banks a tiny, a little bit of fits. And then JTT went down with the injury, took a minute to come back. And by then, I think Kelvin had kind of, centered himself, and he was good to go the rest of the game. He was just fine. But, I kept asking myself, how many times does Cam Williams have to get beat for them to put Trevor Gooseby in? I get it. It's Jack Sawyer. I get it. He's likely a day one pick and all that. Trust me, I get it.
I don't think they would have done that to Cam in that situation. I think if he's healthy enough to play, then you ride with him.
Yeah,
that's just my thing on the offensive line. The offensive line to me is a different animal than any other position group.
Well, what about all the rotations with DJ Campbell and Cole Hudson? DJ Campbell's healthy.
Okay. I'm glad you brought that up because let's just break down that since we're talking about it. Let's just break down that goal to go series at the end. On first down, they bring in Jaden Chapman. They go heavy. And
they brought Jaden Chapman and Nate Kibble. And if you watch that play, Nate Kibble gets blown up, and the guy who Nate Kibble is supposed to block is who makes that tackle.
Right.
Also want to talk about that. Why in the hell in that game are you putting a true freshman offensive lineman who has not played all year outside of special teams into block?
That's a very
horrible
good
decision making in my opinion. And Jaden Chapman, I get it. You have those two guys, but why are those the two guys you used at those positions? And again, you haven't had Nate Kibble on the field blocking anyone outside of special teams the entire year, if I'm not mistaken. And you chose to stick him on the line of scrimmage to have the most important block for the running back to get into the end zone at that part in the game with the chance to go to the national championship.
Like Malik Agbo couldn't do that?
Yeah, it's the same thing as why the hell is Keelan Robinson on kick return with the cast on?
It's the other personnel decision. Go back and look at the right guard on that play. Who's lined up at right guard? It's not DJ Campbell. It's Cole Hudson. And that's the point where, all due respect to Cole Hudson, if you want to bring in Cole Hudson as a sixth offensive lineman in that situation, cool, whatever. DJ Campbell's one of your best run blockers in a short yardage situation. I want 52 in there. Why is he not in there? And I'm not saying they would have scored or that would have changed anything, but this is part of the deal. Like you've got it's the lack of a red zone identity, Jordan, is what it boils down to. What you got to figure out in the red zone between the 20s. Sark has the kind of offense where he's always said it. The more we can do good, the tougher we are to defend. And versatility is the strength of his offense. But your focus has to narrow in the red zone. And I'm not saying this like I hope Sark hears me. Sark knows what I'm talking about. I'm saying this for Gen Pop to kind of help everybody understand where I'm coming from. Your focus narrows in the red zone because the field is condensed. It cuts down your playbook. You've got, as a play caller, you've got to be at your very best in the red zone. You got to know what personnel you're going with. You got to know what kind of plays you're going with. You got to go into every game with a really good feel for the red zone. And that's my deal. Like, I say it's a lack of an identity because Sark just didn't really have a feel pretty much all year in high leverage spots in the red zone. Think about how many red zone turnovers they had, how many blown assignments they were. And I think part of it is understanding your personnel. DJ Campbell's got to be on the field. Yeah. If he's good enough to start over Cole Hudson, he's got to be. And I'm not saying it's a knock on Cole Hudson, but you got no push in that situation. Like in that short yardage run, the Gibson run, you got no push. It was a stalemate. And guess what? On the goal line, if it's a stalemate and you're the offense, you lose.
Yeah. And like, he had a wonderful career and is the best center at Texas since I don't know who. But you know who and what Jake Majors is. You cannot expect him to get push on Tyleek Williams if they're going one-on-one. So if that's the center nose tackle matchup, again, why is Cole Hudson in the game if you have DJ Campbell over there on the bench?
That's why I don't like – one of the reasons why I don't like the jumbo package. You're already condensed vertically because of the down and distance. A jumbo package just condenses you and hamstrings you horizontally. I want to spread it. It may look – I guess it depends on what your take is on how you feel about the Texas offensive line. If you thought the Texas offensive line should have just been able to match people at the point of attack, this group, they got to where they could do that against certain opponents. But against a Georgia, against an Ohio State, it just wasn't the kind of group that you could count on. And against those elite defensive lines, you can't count on them to just match people and win every single battle. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. So to me, if the talent is even, or if the other side has better line of scrimmage talent, I got to help my guys out as much as possible, which means I got to spread things out a little bit. I got to get some of those bodies out of the box. And you know what? If Ohio State's still going to have their safeties in, if they're still going to condense everything inside, then throw the ball in the red zone. I don't mind throwing the ball down there. Granted, I don't want to see the fade, but I'd throw the ball. Like, it's just a lack of an identity. It's a lack of feel. It's all the same thing. It all boils down to the same thing. And Daryl G, I see your point. You say this is why he needs an OC, not because of play calling, but player utilization, more eyes on his players. That's not a Sark problem. If the wrong offensive line personnel is not in, that's on Kyle Flood. If the wrong tight end personnel is not in, that's on Jeff Banks. Or if it's a running back situation, that's on Tashard Choice. That's why you have open communication with your staff. Now, the problem is if it's Sark being stubborn and hard-headed and doesn't care isn't listening to anybody, that's a different conversation. But if the coaches have free reign to put personnel in a certain situation, then that's on whoever the position coach is.
Yeah, and I mean, not just the personnel I have questions about. I mean, obviously the play calling. And I get what Sark said in the presser afterwards of being, we got stuffed and we tried to run it up the middle, so we went away from it. I get going away from it from a player too. Man, you're telling me you're going to give up once trying to run it up the middle? And also, like, I know everyone keeps saying it in here, and it's probably pretty common sense that all of us have thought it. But, like, dude, you're on the 1 yard line. You can't line up Quinn Ewers under center and lean forward into the end zone, or at least try it. Or stick Arch Manning in. The one play you called Arch Manning in on 4th and 1, what did he do? He got you a first down. How many times this year has he called Arch Manning in on a design run and it either got 0 yards or lost any? I can't think of an instance. Because they didn't overdo it like they did at Tyrone Swoops and the 18-wheeler thing where you were telegraphing the play call, right?
Yeah.
They didn't do it enough. So if I can't think of an instance where Arch lost yards on that play design, run it again. He's 6'4", 225 for a reason. Use that. Not every team has that. And I've seen some people speculate that Manning got concussed on the 4th and 1 play, but if nothing has come out about that, then we're not going to address that really.
I can tell you this from what I saw. Every time there was a media timeout and I looked at who Quinn was throwing with, Art still had his helmet on and was throwing with Quinn between play stoppages, like during the change of possession. So if he's still involved there, that tells me if he's in concussion protocol, then he's not anywhere near the field. If he's in concussion protocol, he's not anywhere near the field after the game.
Yeah, and also like you don't have to QB sneak it. Maybe try it once, but try something. Why does Jarrett Gibson get 1 carry the entire game and then you just give it up? Try something. It doesn't have to be a heavy set. Try jumping over the top like Bo Jackson. I don't care. You have to score there, right? And Joey Austin brings up a good point. Even if they got stopped on 4 runs, Texas D would have had Ohio State pinned deep. Sark also talked about that in the presser and said, obviously, that's what the plan was, but Jack Sawyer had other plans himself. But
can I bring this up though? Chip brought this up. I'm sure Chip will bring this up on his show because I'm sure he and Zay will talk about it. And I was like, you know what? That's crazy enough to work. You still had 2 timeouts and the 2-minute timeout.
Yep.
And granted, like the odds are long. Like you need to get a 3 and out and get good field position, everything else. And that was most likely going to be your best scoring opportunity. In other words, there was no guarantee you get another possession. So I don't fault Sark for not taking the points. But to me, the argument for the field goal is you had no feel for what to call down there. Nothing was working. And you had gone from 1st and goal inside the 1 to 4th and goal at the 8. At that point, do you salvage the possession and just say, you know what? Let's just get the 3, trust our defense. Let's hope we get another possession. I know that's dicey, but you can't have the turnover and have a 14-point swing right there either. So it's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. I know that's very much second guessing Monday morning quarterbacking, but I would have, in other words, I'm saying if Sark would have taken the points, Jordan, you can rationalize it. You might, nobody would have agreed with it. And I don't think he was ever intending on doing it, but I would almost agree with it just because, man, it was so bad that it's like, dude, let's just salvage a field goal out of this.
Yeah. Yeah, and CB, I said the same thing to people after the game. Like, man, I wasn't in New Orleans for the Washington game, but that felt similar. And
it felt different to me because it's one of those. It feels different to me because of this. The Washington game last year, even thinking about it, like, man, if they lose this game, they lose it because Michael Penix just balled the F out. Like you got a really good quarterback on a hot night, and it was what it was. Everything went in your way. The breaks you needed to get on Friday, you got them. Ohio State shot themselves in the foot with penalties. They turned the ball over. You were able to get some stops on them. Will Howard reverted to Will Spill the Pill Howard, which we talked about, Jordan. That version of Will Howard was in there somewhere. And he was probably going to show up at some point during this run for Ohio State, and he showed up on Friday.
Yeah,
you were able to stop their run game. You did a great job against Jeremiah. You held Jeremiah Smith to 1 catch for 3 yards. You hold Jeremiah Smith to 1 catch for 3 yards and hold that offense to 21 points. That should be enough for you to win that ball game. That set up exactly the way it needed to for you to win. That was the frustrating thing for me because everything lined up. There was no this guy played the game of his life or this thing happened. It was, dude, you're right freaking there. You're right there. Every break you needed to get, you got right up until that goal to go series.